Kilted
Kilted
balls.
balls.
Woo! That
Yeah.
that might be the first time you've ever started first with the theme song.
Well, I started before I clicked my button, I was getting prepared. I had a
Oh my
different
gosh.
song in mind, but that was good. It's almost like we just hung out for 2 weeks.
It's almost like we just hung out. Yeah, our last episode we were together. That was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun.
But now we are back in our respective locations. So that's a good time. It's a
Hmm.
good time. So and
Well,
it
it's
was
good to get
fun.
out of here. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
that was
It
a
was great.
great week. So I imagine though that you and Gina were probably happy to get back to your own house.
There was just a lot of stuff to do. So it's kind of like just catching up. And thankfully, I had a ton of orders, which I just put on my website, like everything. And I put everything was going to be sent the 19th, but everything that was being shipped USPS didn't go out till today because
Oops.
of Juneteenth, which I didn't think of when I was putting it up there. But
Oh yeah.
only one person wrote me and they were just like, "Oh, I haven't heard anything about my tracking," but thankfully they live in the next town over, so I'm like, "You'll get it tomorrow."
It'll be there. It'll be
Uh-huh.
there. Just in time for you to celebrate July 4th. I guess
Exactly.
a little bit early, but I imagine it. I'm drinking a bee's knees today. I don't know.
Oh,
Remember, I
how is
had one
it?
of those before.
Hmm.
It's good. I tried the Petoskey gin with it this time. I'm not sure how I
Hmm.
feel about that. I wonder if I should make it just a touch sweeter and maybe put ice cubes in it.
Okay, I
Like
bet
it's
you that would help.
chilled, like I shook it
Hmm.
with ice, but
Yeah, I just have the old Aquafina today.
mm. And it's I don't have a martini glass, I realized. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, it was funny. Who was I talking to? Who was sitting next to me? Marie was sitting next to me.
Okay.
And this was after the party, like the family and close friends stick around, and
Yes.
we were drinking whiskey and having a good old time, and scotch and various other things. But anyways, uh, Marie was sitting next to me, and I was telling, oh, because you had brought out your infinity bottle, so
Oh
we were talking
yes.
about that, and I was telling her that I was at the Goodwill, and it was a candy holder. So if anyone could picture a candy tray that's shaped like a martini glass. So it was probably like a
Yes.
foot tall and the top of it's like 12 inches around, but it's shaped like a martini glass. And
Yes.
we're at the Goodwill. I was like, I should get that for my martinis, Gina. And she's just all happy. And I was telling Marie that and she was rolling. So we're having
That's
fun
a
with
good
that.
time.
But yeah, I don't have martini glasses either. Martinis aren't something I tend to drink, but I'm not opposed to them.
Yeah,
Just
this sometimes I have them, but I never use a martini glass. Like I just use my normal pint glass. So
yeah, you're just doing it wrong.
yeah,
So
and now
I
now I'm using a wine glass to kind of
mm-hmm,
mimic.
there you
So
go. I don't know if you had anything planned and I was thinking this week because I was thinking and I don't know how heavy or how deep you want to go or if you had something else planned,
yeah,
but I was thinking this week a lot about forgiveness, a lot about trauma, whether it be physical or like mental, possibly. I mean, people have all sorts of
yes,
things going on in their life, and
so
just the
much.
importance of that and kind of moving back. But the only thing was, I don't like as much as I know about you, I don't think you've experienced a lot of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we talked a little bit about this on a podcast once,
Hmm.
just
I think
just
we covered a
briefly,
little bit. Yeah.
just briefly, because I remember talking then that I was in I have to do a lot of trauma training.
Hmm.
You know, being able to identify and being able to kind of deal with it to make me better. And I remember at one of them, it was looking for our own trauma
Hmm.
after like COVID-19, and I was like laughing because I'm like, I don't have any trauma. I don't have, and then
Hmm.
they started going through things, and I was like, oh, clearly I have because I have all of the symptoms of these. But it's interesting because it's not like trauma. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think that's what people forget about. Maybe not forget about, but we heard this a few weekends ago. Everybody's in different spots on their journey,
Hmm.
and you have to respect wherever anybody is on their journey. So for me, you're exactly right. I don't have a lot of trauma. And because of the way my upbringing is, things that would traumatize most people don't traumatize me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and that's again, parenting, the way I grew up, you know, nature versus nurture. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean I don't experience trauma.
Mm-hmm.
It's just things that a normal human wouldn't consider trauma, because the things that normal humans consider trauma, I've been programmed or conditioned to not consider trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of weird.
See, that does work. Now you were there. I experienced trauma this weekend, and that's one thing that made me think of it. And I have forgiven. I've totally forgiven,
Yes.
and thankfully I'm healing and moving
So
past.
are you gonna tell the story? Because I don't know if Heather listens to this podcast, but another one of our friends, Stacy, does, and I'm sure she would love to hear the story.
Stacy was not there. She was talking about, or I guess she wouldn't have been there. That no,
I
I guess
I
that
thought
was
she was gonna show up, but she did not
she
show
was
up.
talking about it.
Yeah.
So we were playing pig, but with disc golf discs.
Mm-hmm.
So our buddy Jamie was there, and our buddy Ephraim was there, and so uh, Ballbuster picked a shot where you run around this little barrel 5 times and then shoot. So he did it and shot, and Banks was there, our dog, and he was on his leash. And then it was Jamie's turn. Jamie is doing it, and Banks was kind of biting at him, biting at his butt a little bit, and Jamie was swatting him away. And I didn't realize this till you were helped me tell the story the other day. You said you grabbed Banks for Ephraim.
Well, because it wouldn't be fair for Ephraim to have to deal with Banks.
Yeah, Ephraim has
I don't know
definitely
if I
not thrown a
grabbed
disc
him or if
even
I was
close to
just
his
in
many
his
times.
way, you
Okay.
know.
So then it was my turn. Everyone has hit their shot. So it was
Mm-hmm.
my turn to do the shot. And Banks was biting me in the butt too. And I did not swat him away. I just kept running. And he decided to turn the other way and get me as I was coming back around. So he did bite me and it did hurt really bad.
Wait, where did he bite you again? I missed that.
In the beans. I
In
was
the
thinking the Frank was okay, but the beans
but
were not.
the beans got nipped.
So the first thing I did was look down in there and there was blood.
So here's what I want to know. Where did he push the Frank out of the way, or were your beans just hanging that low that he just caught them?
That is a
Like,
great question.
or
I think
Is your Frank that small that he
between
was just getting the beans?
C and A, I think my Frank was on the other side of the room, we'll say. So yeah, the trauma did tend to be focused on one side. So yeah, after 3 days of because like we didn't really have any band-aids, and I didn't really think there were any band-aids that would work on that. Because it was too maybe like
what was your quote when I offered you a band-aid? You can't put a band-aid on a forest.
I did say that we're still kind of in winter time. So but yeah, it was like every time I moved, the healing that was taking part with my underwear did come apart.
Mhm.
So it was rough. But I have forgiven Banks. I have moved on. I still love him. But
Aw.
even though that's a funny story, there's people have all sorts of other things. And and I don't know if I've ever said this. I mean, I think that you've heard things, but I wanted to be able to bring it around too. The story is hilarious.
Oh my
But
gosh, so
some
funny.
of my earliest memories are my mom and myself and my brother being hit by my brother's dad.
Oh,
So, and that was something that, and I don't know, because we talk about like we don't know how we are like we are, but we are.
you're right.
And it was something like, he wasn't around for too long. He was around for a few years, and then Paul came into our lives, and everything's been different. I've said that many times here, and anyone who knows me, like I'm super thankful that he came into our lives.
Hmm.
But like I didn't really after that, I didn't really have any contact with him until we were in our teenage years.
Yeah.
And even as a 13, 14, I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I had already forgiven him. And I knew that, and it's something that I thought about at the time because I didn't have like any animosity towards him or anything like that. Like,
Right.
yes, I could remember these things and they were not pleasant, and I knew that it was wrong, of course, and it's not something I ever wanted to do or follow along.
Right.
But it was wild for me to even think about now, like where would that have come from where I didn't have, and I told him that. I said, I know you're a different man now, and I have no hard feelings towards you. And I would say it meant a lot to him, and we've
So
been in
you've
contact
talked
here.
to him since then.
Yes, actually, when we were teenagers, he he'd straightened his life up and
Hmm.
changed a lot, and took Shane and I, like we went all over Michigan, and then we went to Texas. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks that we hung out with him
Okay.
because he had family down in Texas, and we saw family in Michigan. So even though he was my brother's dad, he did that for both of us.
Nice. That's
But yeah,
awesome.
and it's some like, like I said, I've talked to him here and there through the years. And, if I was in an area he was in, we try to meet up and stuff like that. So he was down in Florida for a while.
It's interesting. Gal, I don't know if this is something I'm supposed to talk about because I can't remember the details. So if I start telling this and you're
Hmm.
like, whoa, 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 that was something you weren't supposed to talk
No, you
about.
can tell anything. I have nothing to
No,
hide.
no, no, not you.
Oh,
Not
oh,
you.
oh.
I don't remember. So there's something tickling in my brain about this that we were just talking about, or maybe Amy and I were talking about. But it was like a kiddo who was 23, which isn't a kiddo,
Hmm.
like around that age. And somebody was like, yeah, but they're kind of like a jackass. It's like they're 15 or 16. Do you remember this story?
You
Shit.
know what? There might be a slight, yes, there was maybe when you were down here, you were talking about it.
No, I think it was up here. It was up here this last week. We were talking about somebody, like somebody was dating somebody.
Because when the trauma happens, they stay that age.
Right. And so that's what we were talking about. Like Amy and I were like, oh,
I
this,
do remember you
we're
talking
like,
about this.
that was down there, totally different story. But this one was up here with somebody.
Hmm.
And Amy was like, yeah, they're just having all this trouble because he's 23, but really he's like 15 or 16. Like that's how he acts. I'm like, well, because that's probably when his trauma happened.
Hmm.
And Amy was like, oh, yeah, yeah, for sure. That's when his trauma happened. I'm like, well, they've got to heal before they grow. But
Yeah.
I can't remember. Somebody is gonna like listen to this and be like, "Oh, that was private, you dumbass. That was like your long lost cousin." And I'll be like, "Oh shit." I can't remember what the story was about. Like obviously I remember the one you and I were talking about.
Yeah.
That's totally different.
Okay, that was a different one then.
Yeah, but this was
Okay.
something like recent, and I was like, "Who? Why are we talking about that?" I don't remember. I don't remember. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
like a thing, right? Like
Hmm.
you kind of got to get past that trauma
Hmm.
before you can grow, right? And
Yep. And even just, maybe it's not something that comes innate to you. It's
mhm.
something like, you might hold more of grudges. You might not be as fast to forgive as someone like myself,
Right, right.
to a fault. But you can get past that and you can move on. And really when you're holding those feelings on there, you're not hurting anyone but yourself. And people,
Yeah.
we talk about that with anger, we talk hate, anything like that, anything negative feelings like that, you're really only hurting yourself.
Yeah, I talk to kiddos about that a lot. Like when you get all mad and fiery and feisty and you're like, "Arr!" I'm like, that's you. Like that hurts
Hmm.
you, not the other way around,
Hmm.
you know?
And
Oh my
we
gosh.
talked about that here and
I
there.
did have a funny story for you.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe we didn't talk about who knew after spending 2 weeks together, I'd have a story for you. Right.
Must have got
So,
kidnapped or something.
oh my gosh. So Father's Day, we're out driving around. We went to church in Lansing,
Hmm.
and we get done, and it kind of shows how different people handle things, and also how some days I'm good and some days I'm not. This was a good
Hmm.
day for me. I think I was like, man, I was like so chill. But it's like Father's Day, and we're trying to find him. We went to go to the Ethiopian place and it was closed,
Oh
right?
man.
And so I just turned around. I'm like, you know what? We haven't been to Olga's forever. Like so long that the girls were like, have we ever even been here?
Mm-hmm.
And there's that Olga's right there. So we went into Olga's. There's not a lot of people. And, there's six of us. So they sat us in the back in this huge ass booth for six, right? And my little guy, who's, turning six tomorrow. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of a big day. He's turning six. He's kind of bouncing off the walls a little bit. He's full of piss and vinegar at the time, just
Mm-hmm.
hyper, kind of right before tired. It's been a long week of playing. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
So he's not being like bad, but he's definitely like laughing and jumping around. And this old lady comes and sits in the booth and she's like facing me. And she's like talking really loud the whole time and like just
Mm-hmm.
totally didn't care, right? Like you do you. And then it what I think was her daughter came and joined her. And we had a big argument at the table later on the drive home about how old she was, right? Because the lady was a gray haired lady.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm thinking 60s, 70s, which may be wrong, right? I think of us as not old. And
Yeah.
yet then I'm like, oh my gosh, we're a person like 50. So maybe that lady was pushing 50, but I think she was probably like 60, 70, but looking good, moving around and
Mm-hmm.
with it. And this other lady's like sitting there and she joins her kind of late and they're eating and we get our food and we're eating and we're being our normal fun loving family that we
Yeah.
always are, right? So we're laughing a lot and we're joking and we're teasing and
Mm-hmm.
being our normal self. And he's being a little crazy and we have to keep telling him to stop. And at one point, I don't know what he was doing, but he was like laughing loudly, like
Mm-hmm.
yelling. And we're like, hey, you need to stop, buddy. It's kind of distracting stuff. And he like rolls on the scene. He does it again. And we're like, Cal, you need to stop. This isn't good. And the lady turns around in her booth and she's like looking at us. And she's like, it is getting really distracting. And I'm like, okay. Like the girls were like, you had like the biggest grin on your face and you're kind of
Uh-huh.
red from being in the sun. I'm just like, yeah, because I thought she was joking. Like
Uh-huh.
the grandma was having fun the whole time. And so she turned around, she's like, it is getting kind of distracting. I'm like, heck yeah, it is. That's what I just
Mm-hmm.
said. Well, then she continues and she's like, sometimes when you're dealing with kids, you need to put them in time out away from where the action occurred. And I'm like, and Amy's like ready to like flicker off and like blaze guns. And we just kind of like stare at her. And then she
Mm-hmm.
like turns around and we're just like, I'm still like thinking it's hilarious. And the
Mm-hmm.
girls are like, okay, let's go. And I'm like, I'm not leaving. Like, I don't care if I make other people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. But like, A was like super pissed. I think Ava was grumpy because Ava, has that kind of
Mm-hmm.
personality sometimes. And, Cal, Cora, and Brenna are kind of like, whatever. Like, Brenna's like, whatever. And the other two are kind
Mm-hmm.
of oblivious. Right.
Yeah.
And we like stay for like 5 minutes, pay our bill, and we're still kind of having fun, but not loud. And Cal's
Mm-hmm.
kind of calmed down. And we like leave. And Amy's just like, oh my gosh, I should have yelled at her and done this. And I'm like, listen, you gotta, she's coming from a different place. She's like, did you hear? Then she was talking about it's like raising dogs. And you have to do this when they're young, when you're
Mm-hmm.
raising dogs, and blah, blah. I'm like, listen, there was an old lady and a mom at Olga's on Father's Day. I go,
Mm-hmm.
no father to be seen. I
Yeah.
go, maybe she was just bitter that we were all having a good time and she's there without her dad.
Mm-hmm.
I go, or maybe she was left because it didn't
Mm-hmm.
look like she had kids. I'm like, but
Yeah.
she's talking to someone like me, and I'm sitting here going, three girls at the table doing great. Maybe I know what
Yeah.
I'm doing,
Yeah. Yeah,
but I
exactly.
but I didn't say anything because I'm like, I don't know where she's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And Aim was getting super mad, and I'm like, listen, you don't know where she's coming from.
Yeah.
Like it could be a really traumatic time for her, but she was like lit, and Ava was like, nah, you should have lit her up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, maybe. I go, maybe I could have. I could have been mean,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of chose the path of not. I was just, they're like, well, your smile is mean.
Uh-huh. That's when you just smile at someone like you
I'm like,
are an
I was just
idiot.
smiling the whole
I'm
time. I'm
just
like,
being nice.
she's talking. I'm like, And they're
Oh,
like,
that's
your
so
smile's
funny.
worse. And I'm like, but people can't, I go, people get mad about me smiling at them all the time. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And Brenda's like, no, you don't engage. Brenda's like, you don't engage with Karens. And I'm like, I didn't know Karens were like really real. Like, I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
know people talk about them and stuff, but that's
Yeah.
like my first real run-in with a Karen.
Nice.
And, you know, Amy's like, well, you got to tell them what's what. And Brenda's like, no, you can't fix them. And I'm like,
Mm-mm.
I'm a huge believer in you can't fix stupid, right? Like, stupid is you don't fix it, you just let it
Mm-hmm.
go, you know, and you don't let that eat at you. But yeah, so that was a pretty funny thing. And I'm sitting there thinking the whole time, man, girl, if you thought that was bad, you should have been at the zoo.
Yeah. Morgan was screaming today. I was thinking of you.
Well, I'm like, my boy's laughing too loud with his family and you're getting pissed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you don't even know what distracting is, lady. Like,
Yeah.
go somewhere else. It's not like you're at a fine dining establishment.
Yeah, exactly. You're at
Enjoy your
Olga's.
peasant soup and
Mm-hmm.
get out of here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was funny. I was amused, and you know, I did not feel bad at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, whatever.
So how was it? I almost took Gina and the kids there because it was close to what I wanted, but it wasn't exactly. So that's why I didn't do it.
It's Olga's, so I thought it was
Yeah.
fine. You know, the snackers were good. The bread was good. The normal Olga's I got was good,
Yeah.
but it's still, I mean, it's Olga's. It's not like, again, it's not like a super fancy place. It's not
Yeah.
like you're going to Zaytoons or something, right? But it
Yeah.
was, I enjoyed myself. I thought I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
That lady didn't stop me from enjoying it.
She tried to.
I'm like, girl,
Mm-hmm.
like, you're yelling at the wrong people here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, like as soon as you turned around and saw the kiddos there, but maybe she thought they were all like young kids, not realizing that they're
Yeah.
somewhat semi-successful kids right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, lady, and the girls all think they knew the old lady, and I was like, she did look familiar. And I go, that's the worst. I go, because you're not, you've been out with me,
Mm-hmm.
right? I know a lot of people when we're out wandering
Yeah.
around, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, lady, you might actually know me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's at first when she did that, I'm like, oh, she must know me from somewhere and it's being funny. And
Yeah.
then I was like, oh, I think she's serious. Right. But then, like, when
That's the
she got
best
done,
part. Are
and the
you
old
being
lady was like
serious?
waving at Cal, like Cal leaves and Cal's like, hey. And she like waved at him, hey. And I was like, and so I'm like, the old lady was cool, but I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
they might know me. And I go, and they're gonna run into me sometime, and I'm gonna be like,
Yeah.
sorry, like, I don't know. I'll be like,
Yeah.
hey, how's your dog raising going?
Yeah, exactly.
I know
And
you.
people look at it like that. And Gina knows somebody who is very much like that sort of stick animal person, we'll
Mm-hmm.
say,
Mm-hmm.
and who thinks it should be with kids as well. But that person doesn't have any kids.
Yeah.
And who knows what will happen if they ever do, if they choose to or not choose to. And yeah.
We are really, it's funny because Gina challenges us on this all the time, but
Mm-hmm.
we are really firm believers, and you don't judge how people parent. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
parent how they parent, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what they do. And everybody's, like I said, everybody's at different places in their battle.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's in different spots of their life. And so you can't expect people to all parent the same way. And I don't think there's a right and a wrong way to parent, with a couple
Mm-hmm.
exceptions, right? So, like, we all the time will see people and we'll just be like, you know, they're probably doing their best,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, Morgie drives me freaking batshit half the time, right? Like, I'm like, beat that boy, beat that boy. But I think all the time, I'm like, I don't
She's
live
gonna
that.
love it.
I'm
She's
like, I
gonna
don't
love it
live
when she
that
hears
life,
this.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm like, that's not my life. Like, I don't know. Like, she is with that kiddo 24/7 all the time, every single day. And that's different than
Mm-hmm.
somebody who sees that kiddo for 2 hours a day or 6 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it's a totally different thing, which is why we try not to judge. But she makes it so damn hard all the time, all the time. I'm always like, Gina, what the hell?
Just whoop them.
Just whoop him. Today I did this to Cal. He was doing something wrong. He's like right in front of me, and he'd been being a little pest. And then he
Mm-hmm.
came up and started being like a pest to me. And I
Mm-hmm.
just super, super fast but lightly, got
Mm-hmm.
him on the cheek, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not enough to like even leave a mark, but it was like
Yeah.
boom, like quick. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, and I go, we don't behave that way. And he's like, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
that's so you know. He's like, I don't even know what I did. I'm like, think about what you were doing. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, that's bad. We don't do that. But it was
Mm-hmm.
like, just, and he was just like shocked that I would touch his face, which is
Mm-hmm.
why I did it. Cause I'm like, I bet that'll
Yeah.
like wake
That
his
shock
ass up.
factor.
But I wasn't like, again, it wasn't people who are listening, like literally was a super fast touch.
Mm-hmm.
Not like I slapped a 6-year-old, right?
Yeah.
But it was funny because he's like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like, did you really touch me? I was like,
Like,
heck
how did
yeah.
this happen? Mm-hmm.
It was super funny. But sometimes like he kept hitting Amy's butt right before that, like over and over and over, thinking it's really, really funny, which it kind of is. But he's to that age now where people at school are not going to think that's funny,
Yes.
right?
Well, that's one thing that we've started talking about because Morgie will start pre-K
Mm-hmm.
and there are things he's going to have to be able to do and not do, like, you experience. See,
Mm-hmm.
he's heard words and we don't know where he heard words from, but that he likes to yell as loud as he can
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
mix them together and all sorts of stuff. And
Oh
like
my
that's not
gosh.
going to be okay in August.
No, like that screaming thing will put them over the edge, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's the scream that normal kids use when shit's at the fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like that's the scream where drop everything and come running.
Mm-hmm. But it was funny. We were laughing because Nate's daughter was doing that Saturday, that same screen. Morgie
What was
wasn't
she?
there. She come running over. So it was hilarious.
Yeah,
We
well,
were
and kids will
laughing.
do that, right? Like Cal's done that before, and like we're like, ah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he's like, oh, I dropped my toy. And we're
Mm-hmm.
like, don't do that because we were
Yep.
having a freaking heart attack. Well,
Yep.
and that's the problem right now. Like he does that now, and Gina's like, yeah, that's cool because that's what he does,
Yeah.
right? Like that's what
So
he
when
does,
it's
and that's how he
important, it's not going to be.
right
Yeah,
when he
we've had to
breaks
explain
his
that with
leg,
Oliver too.
you're gonna be like,
No, just
oh
get up.
shoot, you really were hurt,
Yeah.
right? We didn't know you were being kidnapped this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have another funny kid story for you.
Hmm.
So I was trying to get Cal to ride his bike yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and he's riding his bike, and we're going down the sidewalk, and Amy's kind of going with us, and our dog appears out of nowhere, right? Like walking with us. We're like, where the hell did you come from? So she's trying to get the dog to come back. The dog's trying to follow Cal and I on the bike, and Cal and I are headed towards the church, which you understand, the
Mm-hmm.
listeners, sorry, but we're headed to the church. And so she finally gets the dog and she starts heading back to get a leash or something, right? So we ride around the church and we come back and she's walking towards us and we can see police officer lights like in the distance. And so she comes walking up and she goes, do you see those police lights? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, that's Cora's boyfriend. I'm like, no way. And she goes, we should go around. I'm like, there is no going around. Like we're 1 block from home.
Yeah.
Like that's the way we go. And like she's like laughing and I'm giggling and we start walking that way. And Cal's riding his bike and the police officer gets done with him and he like turns around and Cal's like, hey. And the police
Mm-hmm.
officer's like, hey, and gets in. And then Cal looks in the car and he's like, hi, Braylon, across
That's
3 lanes.
funny.
And he's like,
Yeah.
the kid's like, gets back in the car. And then we get back and he comes walking in. He's like, Braylon, why did the police capture you?
That is so
And he's like,
funny.
oh, I was going too fast. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I understand that. And then he's like, but why were you doing this in the front seat? He's like, I was screaming, no. Cal's like,
Oh my gosh.
why?
Mhm.
But yeah,
So was
and
it
the
that new
cop was
police
just,
officer?
well, the new one who's old, right? Like he's older.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, that's what the guy at the party said. I'm like, he's like brand new, and he's like brand new, but he's like this is his third police force, and he's done
Oh,
like 10
okay.
years at each of them. And I was like,
I
oh,
had missed that part of it.
so I don't know if it's the same one or not, but Amy was like, he's
Yeah.
been sitting there all day in the cemetery pulling people over. And I was like,
Oh,
oh, cool. But he pulled him over, and yeah. And of
hmm.
course, it's as we're walking by, and
That's
the guy,
hilarious.
the cop, like we're ahead of her because we're on a bike and me walking. So when he yelled, "Hey, Braylon," the cop just starts laughing, and he looks
Hmm.
over at Amy. He's like, "Probably won't be able to hide that one from his parents, huh?" She's like, "Nope." So that was a good time. Good
That's
time.
so funny. Yeah, it's so like you're on the outskirts, but you can still walk to stuff, which I love.
It's like perfect, right? Like we walk uptown probably 3 or 4 days a week, right? And the other
Hmm.
day, we went and walked to the retreat center,
Hmm.
and Aim and I are walking like dead center of the road,
Hmm.
walking. Not, we're not even to the retreat center area yet. And we're walking, and she's looking around. She goes, I love this place. I'm like, you like this? She goes, the fact that we can get to the major city in 15 or 20 minutes, or
Hmm.
the big stores in 5. And yet we're able to be here walking down the middle of a road. We're about to hit a retreat center that is wide open and cool, or we can go uptown and get coffee or get ice cream or get a beer or
Hmm.
get wine. Like she goes, it has everything. And yet it also is made of all of these roads that you can just walk down. Today, everything was shut down because they had a classic car show and a farmer's market at the same time. So
Okay.
the whole middle block was completely shut down. Just
Hmm.
we went up there and walked before the baseball game, and looked at all these cool cars. But she's like, this place is just sweet. And I'm like,
Yeah,
well,
that's awesome.
it's kind of why we decided to live here.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like that was kind
yeah,
of
exactly.
that was the thing. Like we didn't have to live here.
Hmm.
We chose it because we knew it was kind of that cool. So
Yeah, it was super awesome. That part was really fun. And I mean, the things kind of got away from us, but it would have been cool to do it a little more. But even I need to write my friend Lori because we were texting beforehand
mm-hmm.
about possibly meeting up, and I just honestly I forgot, sadly. I'll have to apologize. Because like right when I was driving down or driving up, she's like, I need some sheets. And I was like, oh, I've
Oh,
already left, but when I get home,
dang
so we
it.
should meet up. Yeah. So, things happen.
And Gina loved the motorhome. Are you guys going to get one? Get a trailer now?
She really liked it. I don't know. Like, we need to figure something out because she keeps talking about it. I'm like, if we're gonna do it, we need to do it like before we spend money on all the lumber. Because
Yes.
like what we've done so far, we would do no matter what. We're redoing the rooms, and that's
Right.
awesome. And I think part of her concern is that if we have the camper like we wouldn't have the workout room, or we'd have to just switch it, it wouldn't be as big, things like that. So which is one thing she's really looking forward to, because we wouldn't build the walls because we wouldn't need
Right.
to. We
But
put
you can
in
have a workout room anywhere.
But it's 88 degrees in there right now.
They have hot yoga for a reason.
That's what I told her.
Like, go get sweaty,
So
girl.
I don't think we're going to, but I you never know. We might just decide to take a day and hey, let's go look and see what's out there. She did enjoy it. She thinks you have a mouse. I was like, it could be in the bottom area, like all this stuff. So she's like, it
Chipmunks.
woke me up.
Yeah. I was in there for a little bit yesterday, just kind of hanging out. And I was like, man, this is almost like camping. But it
Hmm.
was during the day and I didn't hear anything.
Yeah,
But there could have been, right?
possibly. But yeah,
Possibly.
I think it would be cool. It would be less work.
Uh, I said that to Aim like yesterday when we were hanging out. I was like,
Hmm.
it'd be so much less work to just
Hmm.
pull in. I go,
Yep.
but it's not as big.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
I'd still put it in the bath because I already
mhm.
bought the bath and that stuff. So we'd have a good bath, and
Yeah,
obviously I already put in the water heater. So, and we have the rooms for whatever. We can use the rooms for anything we want.
right.
We could make one of the rooms a workout room.
Yeah,
Just be
heck yeah.
smaller.
Oh, one last thing that I want to talk about. people have heard me talking, gal, almost since we started
Hmm.
about, maybe getting out of the rental business and always talking about like my 4 unit that I
Hmm.
wanted to get rid of it, or maybe I didn't, or blah, 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 blah. Well, I have an accepted offer on it, never listed it. Somebody called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, do you want to sell it?" And the first time I
Hmm.
was like, "No." Then a few months later, he was like, "Hey, do you want to sell it?" And I'm like, "Sure." And they were like,
Hmm.
"Okay, here's an offer." And they sent me the offer, and I was like, "Okay."
Yeah,
So
that's
we're
awesome.
we're going through the process. Like I gave them all the leases today, and they want me to do a lot, like take a ton of pictures and do all of this. And I'm like, if like go look at it. Like I don't
Yeah.
need to take pictures. Go look at it.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you take pictures. I'm like, I don't care.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, I sent them all the stuff today because they're like, we'd really like to get this done like in the next 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, even better. But
Hmm.
yeah, so again, maybe manifesting. I don't know.
It's pretty
But
awesome.
we've been talking about
That's
it
for
for a
sure.
while, and then somebody's doing it, and I'm like, sweet, one less thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's super awesome. I was excited for you. And like you had said, it's one less headache.
It's one
And
less headache.
you want them to be successful, and it seems like they can be, and just goes from there.
Yeah, I was looking at when I'm putting those leases in. One guy is on his second lease with us,
Hmm.
and so that lease started in 2015. But I like pulled up when his first lease started, and it was 2012.
That's
So he's
awesome.
been living in that rental for
Well, like
11
you
years.
had said, he's getting a great deal. He's not going to be able to go someplace else.
No.
Even if they raise the rent quite a bit, he's going to have a hard time finding someplace even
Well,
that
I
close.
couldn't figure out why some of these people, normally people like leave, and I'm like, why have these people, none of them have left? None. And I'm like, they must be getting a smoking deal. And then I like looked at some,
Hmm.
I'm like, they are getting a smoking deal.
Hmm.
No wonder they're all staying. Maybe if I charged them the right rate, I wouldn't want to get rid of it. Well, anyway, people, thanks for going along on this journey with us today. Hopefully, we'll have a lot more to talk about in the next week. But we
Yes.
love you all, and this is Ballbuster signing off.
Kill the Dragon, Jared. Love you all.